Councillors, I'll call the meeting to order, please. If everyone could take their seats and make sure that your electronic devices are in silent or vibrate mode. Make sure that you're properly signed into the system. And I will ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest from any member of the committee. Seeing none, some change in the order of the agenda. If we could please address the two economic development issues, 6.1 and 6.2 first. Could I have a motion to that effect, please, by Councillor Quirk and the seconder, Councillor Joyner. All in favor? Any opposed? Two opposed, thank you. And may I call then, no, I'm going to turn to our Economic Development Director, please.
Thank you. I'm not used to going to the podium.
Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Val Coons. I'm currently the Acting Director of the Economic Development Department. And I would like to talk to you this afternoon about our Economic Development Long-Term Master Plan, just to bring you up to date with the project. So the plan is intended to be a vision of where we would like Niagara to be in the next 20 plus years, and to identify major milestones that need to be reached to achieve that objective. It's going to develop a high-level perspective for economic development, and where it's appropriate, we're going to align it with other regional long-term strategies. It's intended to inform decision-making and economic development activities going forward. So economic development strategies are generally in a 5-year time frame. So this longer perspective that we're taking is quite unusual. But in our current environment where we're seeing growth, it actually makes a lot of sense. The other unique aspect about the project is that we've partnered with Brock University and Niagara College to jointly develop the plan and align the direction of the three institutions. So this ensures that from an economic development perspective, we're all working towards the same goal, and we're increasing our ability to achieve success. The intention is that other regional stakeholders will take whatever aspects of the plan apply to them and look at it in connection with their own strategic thinking, again bringing an alignment right across the region. The project's been managed by a working group with representatives from Niagara Region, Brock University and Niagara College, and overseen by a joint steering committee. My colleagues from the working group are joining me this afternoon. I'd like to introduce them. Dr. Charles Conti, who's the Director of the Niagara Community Observatory and Associate Professor of Public Policy and Management at Brock University. Lyndon Ashton, who is the Canadian Food and Wine Institute Innovation Centre Manager at Niagara College. If they'd like to come down and say a few words. Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, committee members and council members. So my name, as introduced, is Lyndon Ashton. I work for Niagara College, Canadian Food and Wine Institute Innovation Centre.
And I'm Charles Conte, Public Policy Associate Professor at Brock University.
So we're both on the working group as our respective institutional representatives. And so for my part, I'd just like to say that Niagara College is very pleased and grateful to be a part of a process that not only engages post-secondary educational institutions, but actively looks for ways that they can encourage partnership in these types of endeavors, which is very important when we're looking at how our institutions can work together. As you may know, Niagara College has a long-standing, ongoing and collaborative relationship with the Niagara region, with Niagara Economic Development, most recently in ways of where the region is supporting the agri-food and athletics building that's coming on board, as well as industry-driven research projects. So we also are very much embedded in the economic development and the innovation ecosystem with work that we do with the Niagara Industrial Association, that we do with Brock University through game development programs, as well as work in the community and with the Niagara Workforce Planning Board. So for us, Niagara College has always had a long-standing tripartite focus of talent, workforce, and economic development that acts as an ethos that underpins the type of academic programming as well as the research that we conduct. And that's one of the reasons that we're very pleased, and grateful and delighted to be at the table in the working group and supporting a long-term vision for the residents and the economy of Niagara. Thank you.
Thank you.
So imagine the year 1985. The region is the Finger Lakes region in upstate New York. Went through a massive decimation in the driving sector of the economy, the photonics industry. Deeply devastated. They decided to put together a plan, a game plan from the ashes of the devastation. The conversation was the 9 counties that made up the Finger Lakes region engaging the city of Rochester and the universities and the colleges to cast a vision around economic reinvention. Through the fabric, the mechanics that were put in place, you have a massive transformation in the photonics industry from large sectors to a whole ecosystem of small and mid-sized companies that have made Greater Rochester, in fact, a central point of gravitational pull in the global value chain in the photonics industry. They are widely celebrated today, but that conversation in 1985, bringing together the region, the city, the 9 counties, and the universities and colleges, set the foundation for their transformation and reinvention that we now celebrate today. I believe that we are going through the same process in Niagara. The conversation that we're having now in partnership with Brock University, Niagara College, and the region will set the foundation, I'm highly confident, for a massive transformation in the region. Geographical location we have in our favor. We have a wind of sail through revitalization in manufacturing. The story is changing. It's about leveraging that wind of change. It's about positioning our assets, our human capital assets, our physical assets, to take stock of our capacities and our strengths and how, in fact, we can etch a place in the global value chain, whether advanced manufacturing, viticulture, agribusiness, you name it. But the conversation we're having now will be critical to that foundation. So Brock University is privileged and grateful to be invited to be part of this conversation. We're optimistic about the future of the region, and we look forward to the 20-year plan laying out the milestones for how we will navigate that journey to becoming the region that we aspire to become. Once again, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for calling upon us to be part of this process.
Thank you, Professor Conte. Thank you. Val?
Okay. So in February, an RFP was issued to find a consultant to carry out this project. We received 8 proposals. We went through a very stringent technical evaluation and interview process. The successful company was Global Investment Attraction Group, and I'd like to now introduce Bill Elliott, who's a partner with the group, to give you some background on the experience of this company and also the subcontractors.
Welcome, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the invitation, councillors and committee members. Some of you I know I've met previously. We're in the process of completing the first ever economic development strategy for the town of Lincoln, and it's been a very gratifying experience. Previously, we did a manufacturing study and work for the city of St. Catharines, and an economic development strategy for the city of St. Catharines as well. And prior to that, I did some work with Niagara Economic Development back earlier in the 2000s. Just to talk a little bit about our company and background. 3 senior partners. We all have extensive experience in economic development. I spent a number of years in Waterloo Region as Vice President of Business Development for an organization called Canada's Technology Triangle, which did foreign direct investment. Our senior partner, although he doesn't like me calling him his senior partner, is John Tennant, who spent his whole career in the Foreign Service. His last posting was Consul General in Detroit during 9/11, and he was also my CEO up in Waterloo. And our third partner, a very important partner, is Kelly O'Brien, who worked for Deloitte and other agencies and is very much involved in our data and research gathering and that type of thing. So we've done a number of economic development strategies, sector analysis, value propositions, different things like that. We provided the advisory services to an organization which is now known as Toronto Global, which is a new organization set up in the GTA to represent the regions around Toronto, as well as the city of Toronto itself. So I am the project lead for this project. I'm very, very happy to see that Brock University and Niagara College are partners in the process. We firmly believe, and our experience has been, that post-secondary educational institutions are key anchor tenants in the economies which they are located, and that they are key drivers of economic prosperity, and even more so here in the Niagara region. We've also brought in a couple of other partners, Nanos Research. If you happen to watch CTV Question Period, you will see Nick Nanos on it on a quite regular basis. Nick is a world-class researcher and will be working with us on stakeholder engagement. And then we brought in a Global Advantage Consulting Group, a gentleman by the name of Dave Waters, who has extensive experience in terms of dealing with post-secondary educational institutions.
Thank you very much. So I'm just very quickly going to take you through the basic methodology. There are two phases to this project. The first phase, the larger part of the project, is in consultation with our two partners. The second phase is specifically for Niagara economic development. So it takes the longer term plan and it provides a tactical plan with short, medium and long-term objectives for economic development. So we start off with economic analysis and forecasting to look at where we are now. We look at the region in a strategic context. So we look at what other organizations, other stakeholders in the region are doing. And then we look at the external influences. And this is everything from the value of the dollar to the introduction of new technologies, things that we don't really have any control over, but we try to work out what the implications might be for the region. And then the most important part, or the very important part, is the stakeholder consultation process, and I'll go into that a little bit in a moment. And then we finally finalize the plan. So we have start off with an online survey, which I'm going to encourage all of you to participate in. We're hoping it'll go live this week, and I'll send out a link to you, and I'd really encourage you to put your thoughts into that. We have individual stakeholder meetings, and then we have sector-focused roundtables. All of that feeds into what we're calling a straw dog visioning session with our joint steering group. And then those visions are presented at a larger stakeholder session, and that feeds into the draft master plan. And then phase two is much more tactical. As I said before, we have short, medium, and long-term objectives. We have performance metrics attached to them. And then we also look at what external funding sources might be available to supplement our budget. And all of that to say, this is an extremely ambitious project. As I said at the beginning, not many economic development departments would look this far out. And it's obviously, there are a lot of things that could change, and the plan will have some built-in flexibility to it. But the really unique and interesting part about it is that we hope, if parts of it are adopted by our other stakeholders in the region, that we'll actually line everybody up and we'll all be aiming in the same direction, and we have a much greater chance of success in that case in achieving regional economic growth and built-in sustainability. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Val. Before we do that, can I ask please that report ED4 be put on the floor? Councillor Quirk and the seconder, Councillor Easton, sorry. Are there any questions or comments of either the presentation and the report? And they are both here for receipt. Councillor Joyner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at this last page here, and I'm maybe noticing that at a quick glance, there might be a few people missing here. So I see Niagara Health Sciences here. Can we reach out to Hamilton Health Sciences too as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I see the GNCC here and the Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce, who are very, very important. Can we reach out to the other
Yeah,
Chamber of
yeah.
Commerces all across
Yeah,
Niagara?
yeah.
Okay.
So these logos are really just illustrative. All of those people will be part of the stakeholder consultation process.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. And who do we have here that's going to be representing agriculture?
We've actually got both the Federations of Agriculture on our list, as well as Vineland Grow, well, like the whole host of organizations. And we'll also be talking to AMAFRA as well.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Belle.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair Caslin?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, I just thank you for the presentation today and to the presenters. Did you talk about timing on how this is going to be
No,
done?
I didn't.
Okay.
So the phase 1 is due to finish in October. We will bring it hopefully to council. And then the phase 2, which is more the action plan for economic development, it'll be operationalized into our annual business plan. So it'll come to council in January.
January. And I heard through Professor Conte that others have done this in the U.S. Are others doing this in Southern Ontario or Canada?
Not that we're aware of, no.
Okay. So another first for Niagara, and
Yes, absolutely.
I think I think it's great, and the benefits from this will be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Caslin. Councillor Augustine?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I guess I'm surprised at that, because I assumed all these years that that's what economic development has done. I mean, Niagara College, Brock University have always been at the table. When NEDC was its own corporation, there were plans, and I assumed that that's what was being done all the time. So I'm surprised that this is the first sort of plan, and whether it's 20 years or 5 years or whatever, 10 years. So I thought we were doing this already, and if we weren't, shame on us for not doing it already. The idea of working together with parts of the community is so important, to collaborate with these stakeholders. And like I said, I thought that's what we were doing, and I thought that's why we've had all these committees through the years that have been working on this. So supportive, but kind of sad, because I thought we were doing it. Thank you.
Yes, Val,
Yeah, through
have
the
a
chair.
comment, please.
Yeah, there are two really, you're absolutely right. We've always worked with stakeholders, and we've always had partnerships, and we've always consulted. The unique thing, there's two unique things about this project. One is that we're not just consulting with Brock University and Niagara College, they're actually invested as heavily as we are in it. And that is unique, because normally they would be a huge part of the stakeholder process, but we're actually jointly doing this. And the other unique part is the 20 years out. It's normally, as I said, normally an economic development strategy would be 5 years, possibly 10, but to do it 20 years out is pretty ambitious. And we're trying to be much higher level and more visionary about where we're going with it.
Thank you. I appreciate those clarifying points. Pleased that Brock and Niagara College are involved and invested. And congratulations on your leadership for pulling this together, even though you're in an acting capacity. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Quirk?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say congratulations to Val and the team, and thank you to Brock and Niagara College for again being part of this. I think this actually ties in nicely when we look at our transportation master plan, our places to grow municipal comprehensive review, and our wastewater master plan, that we're water wastewater management plan. We are looking 20 years out on our infrastructure needs, and if we don't have a corresponding 20-year plan for economic development, then we sort of just are not bringing all the key pieces together. And especially when you look at the work that we're doing in transportation and how we've identified Brock and Niagara Colleges, both campuses, as a critical intermunicipal transit hubs and working with them to bringing them to the table to have a further conversation. I think this is a great vision that's going to be needed, and at least it's going to have measurable milestones. So we'll be able to say if we are making the right moves instead of having to reinvent an economic growth strategy every 2-3 years or 5 years. We'll be able to take it a more longer scale vision and say where are we missing the targets, where are we meeting the targets, and even what those targets should be outside of the we get assigned job numbers, but normally says where those jobs should be or what they should be doing, and how can we accelerate getting the jobs here faster than the 20 vision. So congratulations, I look forward to seeing this progress. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Joyner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me a second time. Just a very quick question, Val,
Sure.
and this actually goes to Professor Conte. Professor, you talked about the Finger Lakes. What was it again in the Finger Lakes? What was the example again, sir? I missed it. You said it quickly.
Well, Professor Conte, could you come forward to the microphone? We try to capture every word when we're streaming. Sorry.
I apologize, I was trying to be efficient from the back. They specialize in the photonics industry. You recall back in the 1980s, they were known globally for the Kodaks and the Xeroxes of this world. They went through a massive decimation, right? And they had to build from the ashes up. But to do that, they had a conversation with the universities and colleges around how to take the skeletal remains of the photonic sector and build from it. And they had a 15-year plan, right? And that was the beginning of a whole new journey.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm encouraged by the number of partners, and I'm encouraged by the future-looking aspect. I'm wondering, though, sometimes it's necessary to think outside the box, and to do that, I'm just reflecting on the lifetime of ourselves sitting here. Cell phones didn't exist. Computers didn't exist. And look at the unbelievable impact that's had on our economy in terms of just one generation. It's a case where I'm hoping that through your academic pursuit, et cetera, that you're looking at the work of leading edge futurists in terms of the global impact. Because just looking at the last generation of technological innovation and the impact, can just try and imagine outside the box what it might be in terms of moving forward. So hopefully that will be part of the activity, not just talking to the people in-house, but looking at what the leading minds in the world are saying about the future directions. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's part of the first research. The first phase is research, so that's part of that whole research is looking at, what, as far as we can predict, what's going to happen in the next few years, and looking at things like technological change and the fast pace of technological change and how that'll affect our manufacturing companies. That's just one example, but you're absolutely right. If you think about the iPhone and the change that's made to people's lives, then it's revolutionary, and we couldn't have predicted it. So yeah, it's very much part of the process.
And even the impact, the potential impact in unbelievable increased longevity of life due to technological advances, medical advances, et cetera. Obviously, there will be a societal impact to that may be beneficial, but something we need to prepare for. Okay, thank you for that.
Acting Director Coons, thank you very much. Oh, do we have more questions? Sorry, I didn't see. Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I always like to stop and remind everyone that we're part of a greater golden horseshoe. And I'm just hoping that in this process, we make sure that we develop our special place as a partner in the greater golden horseshoe economic cluster, because I think sometimes we tend to kind of look a little bit too inward and kind of forget where we are. And so I hope that that's going to be an important part of the development of the strategic directions, so that we don't lose sight of the fact that as the greater golden horseshoe prospers, we can prosper as well, as long as we identify our place in that economic cluster. So that's not a question. It was just I know you can't cover everything here, but that's one aspect of a strategy that I think we really need to make sure that we play our part, and it's an important part that we own in the GTA.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much for the presentation. I must say that Mr. Elliott was being very on the low down when he was talking about people involved. And we find that this particular organization seems to be able to scale up and scale down. There's been a lot of flexibility in what's been happening within the framework of our contract. And so I want to get a better understanding about how data is going to be used, because every community may or may not be ready to do their own plan. And so having big data and then having that data be applied in a consistent way at the municipal level is really important. And I want to better understand what that means, along with the interpretive element of it in the long term.
Do you want to?
Mr. Elliott, thank you for coming down again.
Thank you, no problem. So if I understand your question correctly, you're talking about there's the data for the region. Obviously, there's the data for the province and for broader areas. And then there's data for individual municipalities. And how is that data going to be shared or utilized in terms of the overall strategy? Have I got your question correct? Okay, and I agree with you. It's, I mean, with two-tiered government and 12 communities, not everyone is at the same level in terms of readiness and information in terms of economic development and economic development strategies. So we will very much try to provide, where possible, the specific data for specific municipalities that will feed into the overall regional economic development strategy. One of the key things that we've experienced is, and what we try to do, and hopefully maybe makes us a bit different, is that we really try to do a deep dive into that data, and not just the data, but with the stakeholder meetings to find out what is truly unique about an individual, a particular geographic area. So what are the true strengths there in that? And how can we share that with the individuals in that jurisdiction and to provide some ideas for them going forward? By and large, economic development websites are pretty boring and they all look the same. We're a great place to live, work, and play, blah, 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 right? And so what we try to say is, no, how do we really identify those key assets? And if there are not maybe those key assets there, then what are the opportunities maybe to work forward and to move forward with some of those key assets? Along with that, just as the municipalities are not an island and the region is not an island, and I think you mentioned earlier, where does Niagara play in a more regional context? You know, it's sexy to be in Buffalo now. It's sexy to be in Hamilton now. I like to say it's been sexy to be in Niagara for a long time, but you're right in the middle now. And so what are the benefits that can be achieved by being in this geographic area between these two larger population-wise areas, and how can we take advantage of that? And that relates at a regional level, and it relates back down into some specifics in some of the municipalities. So hopefully that maybe answers your question a little bit in terms of saying, how do we share this data and make sure that information and data goes back to the municipalities? Because I also believe the municipalities, in working with economic development at the regional level, that there's a role for them to play to make sure that if the region doesn't know what their assets are and what it is that they're doing there and some of the deep dive information, that they go back to the region and make sure they are aware of those things, and that they become true partners in terms of economic development going forward.
Thank you very much for that. Madam Chairman, this goes back to the question that I asked of the regional staff member who was talking about, was providing some data. And as a result of that, he then provided me a report that was very specific to Lincoln, but also specific to agriculture. And the reason I ask this question is because the ministry has requirements and data is put into data sets, and they are not relevant in terms of understanding what your assets are and the value of your assets. It's important, I think, for communities to know what their contribution is to the GDP of the region. And so this is a wonderful project that we have here, and it has many dimensions to it, but the opportunities are really there if we grab onto them. And having that data consistent and relevant is a very, very important part of it.
Of course, and thank you very much for those remarks. Councillor Annunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the presenter. Valerie, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. Economic development, I loved your definition, by the way. To me, it's always been about a retention and an attraction model. And there's always this push and pull between those two elements. One, you speak the language within your borders. The other, you speak a certain language outside of your borders. So going through this exercise, and I want to say hi to Dr. Conte. He's been an incredible advocate and a true leader, and I have the privilege of sitting with Dr. Conte on the Niagara Community Observatory, who does incredible work. So thank you for your leadership, Dr. Conte. So moving forward, we're going to identify our strengths and our weaknesses. And in such a sector-driven economy when it comes to Niagara, whether it's tourism, whether it's agribusiness, agriculture, viticulture, whatever the sector is. Once we identify those strengths and weaknesses, is the intention to capitalize and move forward on what we do well and strengthen what we have? Or at some point, is regional council with our partners going to have to come to some kind of decision as far as how much risk we are willing to absorb and maybe think outside the box? And we've identified something that we don't do well, but it is an emerging market somewhere in the world and we want to be a part of it. So going forward, can you give me some kind of detail as far as recommendations that will be coming forward once we do all the data mining?
Yeah, sure. Through you, Madam Chair. There's both pieces in there.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense to build on your strengths once you identify them, but it also, the whole point of having this 20-year high-level visionary plan is to do exactly what you're talking about, to think outside the box.
Okay.
And as well as the sectors, I think one of the things that we'll be looking at are the enablers as well. So there are things like ICT technology that we're not necessarily looking at that sector, but we want to make sure that our companies have those capabilities within their processes and their production. So, and certainly back to your point about the push-pull between retention and attraction, 80% of growth comes from companies that are already here. So that retention piece is really important. The attraction has to be very targeted and very specific to subsectors and geographies in order to be successful. So again, there's both of those pieces are in there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. So it just gives me an idea as far as where we're going with this exercise. My last question through you, Madam Chair, is once you've identified those strengths and weaknesses, and I'll use broadband, for example, and I know this council has been engaged in the SWIFT program in order to provide that connectivity for Niagara, because there's some rural outliers that just don't have that kind of connectivity. That's an already identified weakness when it comes to attraction and retention. Are we going to have to wait for the report or any recommendations coming forward? Are there things right now that we should be acting on? Because by the time we get all the recommendations coming from this exercise, we may be too late at the table. So how do we do that, I don't know, synergistically? How do we do that proactively? Identify gaps that we could be working towards now that will enable some of the data mining coming forward?
Well, the front end of the project is the research and analysis piece, and the consultants are preparing discussion papers on that front end. That's something that we could share with council if that would help. I mean, that will start to, I mean, it's not the end of the process by any means, and really you won't have the full answer until October when the final report's here. But it would start to show directions, it would start to show strengths and weaknesses, certainly.
And I guess my point to that, Madam Chair, is I don't want to lose any more time.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive global market, and when I look at our territorial competition, whether it's Kitchener-Waterloo, whether it is Hamilton, whether it is the GTA, wherever it is, I'd like to think that they're ahead of us in certain aspects, and if we continue the process of always trying to catch up, then we're always going to be behind. So I'm hoping that there's some things that'll come out of this more proactively that we could actually implement in order to further the process at the end.
Yeah, I think, through you, Madam Chair, I think what we're looking for are the things that are unique to Niagara. So it's not necessarily a case of trying to catch up with them, because what we could be doing would be in a different direction, because we'll play to our own strengths, certainly initially. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maves?
On the floor?
So, yes, they are.
Okay.
ED4 is on the floor.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question. It kind of crosses over a little bit, but actually a fairly practical question. It mentions that you went through a process and had 27 bidders for the website.
Yeah, we're going to have the presentation on that report shortly.
All right, so you have to ask that question later. So, and if I'm going to ask a question about this, is that next?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next one, Councillor.
Thank you.
You're just way ahead of us.
Okay.
Acting Director Coons, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
For all your work. It's a great plan. Thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And it's carried unanimously. And I will call Mr. Dave Raymond forward, please. And yes, the Commissioner will give an introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in terms of an introduction for Dave Raymond's presentation, if you recall, just context-wise, Regional Council at the beginning of its term initiated a project called Global Attractiveness, which was really in response to making the region a more desirable place. Well, it is desirable, but highlighting our attractiveness to increase our population. If you recall, we were talking at the time about the population growth that's required to drive our economy. The provincial allocation to us was about 150,000 persons to 2041, which represents about 7,000 people a year. And we know that those folks are going to have to come to Niagara from outside the region because our natural growth rate, our birth rate is not going to accommodate that on its own. So as Councillor Nunziata was saying, we were looking to develop strategies to become much more proactive in terms of attracting population as a driver of economic performance. If you also recall, that manifested itself in an economic development strategy called strategic marketing, and a full-time resource associated with that in the Economic Development Department, and that's Mr. Raymond's role. So he is the quarterback for the strategic marketing program for the region, which is at this point focused on many things, but an essential focus is on attracting new residents, highlighting our assets to convince people to move to Niagara. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Dave Raymond from the Economic Development Department to provide a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. It's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to you a little bit about the strategy we've been developing over close to 12 months now since I began this journey. So I'm going to start off with a timeline, and I'm going to walk us through each step of the timeline from the community engagement, the RFP process, discovery and planning, our development, the soft launch, which is the stage we're currently in right now. And I'm also going to speak to you a little bit as well about our hard launch, which is on Canada Day. We're going to be in Niagara Falls, and we're going to be handing out some promotional bags that drive traffic to our brand new website, which I'll show you in a moment, welcomeniagaracanada.com. Within those bags is a 16-page immigration guide. This guide here, the first half is to talk about why come to Niagara if you're considering a place to immigrate. And the second half of the document is how, and where are the resources that you would go to if you were considering making Niagara your home, whether that was buying a home, finding a school, finding a settlement worker, finding a job, and all the other things that a newcomer may have questions about. We've tried to cover all that in this document. There's also a welcome letter from the region. And we're going to be handing out some helium balloons on Canada Day, which are all biodegradable. So we're going to stay on this slide for a little bit, and we're going to talk about the community engagement process. We started in September of 2017. We had 8 community engagement events. Some of them had a focus, a secular focus on living in Niagara, working, studying, and investing here. And we understand that none of those things really happen in isolation, but it was nice to break it down that way and really just focus on those components and what brings people into the economy. We also met with newcomers themselves and had an opportunity to figure out why did they choose Niagara. And we also met with international students. We got opinions from all throughout the community. At the same time, we'd had research done even prior to me starting here, lots of different reports that talked about who's coming to Niagara, why, and also a global attractiveness study about what do we need to do to improve ourselves. We took all of that information and we engaged into an RFP process where we announced that we were building a website, and I think it was a 350-page RFP because there was a lot of details in that. Through our community engagement process, we had a very clear idea on what we wanted and exactly how much we had to spend. We had interest from 27 different vendors from around North America, with about half of them within the Niagara region. And it was a fantastic process going through this because they were great companies, but in the end we chose 2 companies that we felt would be able to deliver the best product, both on the web and content end and on the video production end. And we got started right away. From the time we signed the contract, on that very first day, we had our meetings with our groups. We were on a timeline. Part of the engagement process and the beginning part was us receiving dollars. So we didn't do this with just a regional budget. We had provincial and federal funding dollars, as well as some of our partners. What comes with those dollars is sometimes timelines. And so you are now attached to meet a target or timeline to funding. So we met those timelines. This was pretty aggressive, but we were able to build a website and develop a strategy all before April 1st, 2018. And that point on, we started developing. So we'll go through what it was we developed. In your pamphlets, you have the strategy. So those books are broken between a right side and a left side. The right-hand side is a strategy. I'll walk us through the strategy very briefly, and then we'll talk about the development and what did we build that came out of that strategy. I want you to know that everything was very strategic and with the user in mind. Knowing that we want to attract residents and we want to attract business investment is fantastic, but that's a big world and we have very limited dollars. So we have to be very strategic about exactly who, where, why, when, and how are we approaching those individuals to let them know about Niagara. So within the marketing plan, we've set up really 4 major objectives. First was develop that new economic development website and create and revamp the immigration portal. Those pieces have now been complete, but that is it is never ending. The second piece was to create awareness of Niagara, Canada, and promote that tool. The immigration portal is a tool for immigrants to use. So that's the stage where we're in right now. We're going to start promoting these websites, these assets, and drive traffic to the website with the purpose of it being a true portal, directing people to services once they've decided they want to move to Niagara. We'll drive those targeted audience, like I said, to the websites, and then engage with them, engage with video, engage with the different content that we're going to have on the website. And this is a circle. It never stops. We're continually developing and building this website. In the past, the immigration portal was built once, and then it was left alone. That is not how we're going to be engaging with this website. It's going to constantly be updated, refreshed, and there's going to be resources put towards it. And that's the crux of the marketing plan. I mentioned strategic, and it all comes down to knowing your audience. knowing exactly who it is you're putting your message to. So if we concentrate on the right-hand side of this slide right now, in just those circles, this is a visual representation of the overall audience, where the Welcome Niagara site is the largest circle, the largest audience. That's everybody who might be interested in moving to Niagara. We also know in our target audience, our target area within the GTA, that half of the GTA are newcomers to Canada. So all of a sudden, that creates that market a little bit smaller, and that is the immigration portal. Within that, we have a Niagara Canada Economic Development website that wants to attract newcomers, wants to attract new residents, but it's a niche focus on investment. So it becomes its own website where the focus is really on investment in Niagara. And even smaller still is the NFTZ. Those are people who want to invest here, but that's an export market. So as we can see, the audiences get smaller and smaller, but there's tremendous overlap. And we drew a line, and that's on the left side. You see the line between the top and the bottom. And the line is resident attraction and business attraction. Resident attraction is through the Welcome Niagara Canada site, which is the home of the immigration portal, and business attraction is our economic development website, which is pretty cool. We heard that not all economic development websites are great. I assure you, ours is great. And within those audiences, we've broken them down even further. So not just resident or possible residents, but they're between 25 and 45, highly skilled, highly educated individuals living in the GTA. That's who we're driving this message to. On the investment side, it's commercial realtors and site selectors and investment decision makers, people who own businesses who are looking to expand. And some of that is an internal market as well. So we also serve the existing residents who want to know how to start a business. And also, even further out, trade commissioners in Ontario and abroad. They constantly want to know what Niagara has to offer when a potential investor comes to them for advice. So we've always got to be top of mind. So knowing our audiences, we've built a product and some messaging. And again, there's going to be overlap with the messaging. So for prospective residents to Niagara, these are the 5 main messages that we're going to be displaying. Niagara is an ideal place for immigration. It boasts compelling employment and educational opportunities. We have the 20 characteristics of a welcoming community. This comes down to quality of life. What do people think about when they think of quality of life? Well, we've identified 20 characteristics, and our website represents all 20 of those. Niagara is a place for innovation and investment, and the cost benefits of Niagara. Now, you're going to notice those last 3 of the 5, those are bold. And there's a reason those ones are bold, is that's the overlap between the business attraction and the resident attraction. Those messages are the same to both audiences. This is a screenshot of what the website welcomeniagara.com looks like. It has been designed with the user in mind to give you all the information you're going to need about moving and immigrating to Niagara, everything you're going to need to know about finding a home, finding a job, finding a school, and what are the things to do. This site is a real portal. It doesn't answer all questions in completeness. It really gives you a sentence, a paragraph, enough to tell you what you need to go, and then go to that service provider, go to that settlement worker, go to that job board and find those jobs. And it really points people to the right direction. There's also an incredible amount of Niagara stories, user stories. I encourage everyone to go to the site and please take a look at those videos. I know that that is an ongoing process. We're going to be doing that for the rest of 2018, adding at least 40 more videos to both websites, success stories. For economic development, very specific messaging, again, benefit of our location. We have a foreign trade zone designation status, so we're going to be marketing that the best we can. We are also an economic trade corridor. We really have the transportation and infrastructure here to support world trade and access to world markets. We have a skilled and educated workforce. And then, like I mentioned before, those overlapping messages are place for innovation, quality of life, and the cost benefits of doing business in Niagara. This is a screenshot of our website, and it's very specific. So why Niagara? You've got some one-pagers in your sheets, and this really answers all the reasons why Niagara. It's our education and workforce. It is our location. It is our quality of life. Our key sectors: manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, and tourism. And then we also have our incentives, the foreign trade zone, as well as our Gateway CIP program. And the data section is one of my favorites because through economic development, we get questions about data all the time. And we've taken the most popular questions that we've had over the last year and we've put them on the website. If you want to see how the economy is growing, go to our website. If you want to see sector-specific data, go to our website. If you want to see employment information, workforce information, go to our website. So we have 2 videos that I would like to be able to show to you today. And we're ready. Well, we'll show one video because I noticed we're short on time. So this is one video about living in Niagara. I know there's over 30 videos across both websites, but I think this one does a fantastic job in just a minute and a half.
Thank you.
You know Niagara, Canada as a place for global tourism and great wine. But Niagara, Canada is also an amazing place to live, work, and raise a family. You will feel safe knowing that Niagara is among the top 10 safest metropolitan areas in Canada. And it's getting safer. Niagara, Canada also has an exceptional education system with small class sizes in all of its schools, as well as world-class post-secondary programs at either Brock University or Niagara College. And getting around could not be easier. Niagara, Canada has the least traffic congestion of Canada's largest cities and a growing regional transit system. Daily GO train service between Toronto and Niagara will be fully operational by 2021. The time saved getting around can be put to good use, enjoying Niagara's many theaters, restaurants, wineries, festivals, and events. Or get in touch with nature and explore the region's natural beauty, including the Niagara Escarpment, as well as numerous beaches along Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Plus, with more than 40 golf courses and over 300 kilometers of cycling trails, you can play outside all summer long. But the greatest benefit of locating in Niagara is its affordability. The average cost of a home is just $388,500. Young professionals and families are able to thrive in Niagara, Canada because home ownership can be a reality, not just a dream. Welcome home to Niagara, Canada.
Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Very good.
If there are any questions.
Thank you. This is very comprehensive. Could I have a motion, please, to put ED 6 on the floor? Councillor Joyner, seconded by Councillor Edgar. Thank you. And we have questions. Councillor Dart. And,
I was just wanting to know, Madam Chair, if we can see the second video. Yeah.
Oh.
You know what? They're short. I would love to show both.
okay, well, let's do that then. Let's have the second video. You have it?
If we just can click on one of those links there. So there's 2 different types here. We'll call them foundational and success stories. This Jordan story here is a success story. This is a young individual who, through a co-op program, found a full-time job.
Thank you.
My name is Jordan Beaudry, and I'm 19 from St. Catharines, Ontario. I was born here in Niagara region, and I currently work at Niagara Precision. I was a co-op, and they hired me right on as soon as I graduated. We machine parts, prototypes, different sorts of car parts and stuff like that. Yeah, I've always been hands-on, I always like making things. I had a shop teacher, and he taught me a lot about how things work in the trades, and he really pushed me to do better. You need someone to push you along sometimes in life. A piece of advice I'd give to any student is no matter how hard it gets, you need to keep pushing forward and eventually you'll make it there. I definitely plan on staying in Niagara. My name is Jordan, and this is my Niagara story.
We have another one as well, another success story, so that was very short. Maybe we can do the other one.
This one here is an explainer video. This is 2 minutes about why I do business with Niagara, Canada. And this is the longest video we have as well, 2 minutes and 7 seconds.
As a business owner, you work hard to grow your company. When you locate your business in Niagara, Canada, the region works hard for you in 4 big ways. Niagara, Canada is an economic trade corridor with 5 border crossings and access to half of North America's population within 1 day's drive, including Toronto, Buffalo, New York, Chicago, Boston, Columbus, and Philadelphia. Niagara, Canada has a world-class transportation structure with nearby access to 5 international airports, 4 400 series highways, 2 Class 1 railroads, 5 international border crossings, and the Welland Canal. Niagara is home to a labor force of 226,000 and growing. Within a 30-minute drive, you'll find a combined workforce of more than 800,000. You'll also find a huge student population, including 18,000 students at Brock University, 10,000 students at Niagara College, and 27,000 students at nearby McMaster University. When you locate your business in Niagara, you'll be in good company. The region already has a diverse corporate footprint, including General Electric, General Motors of Canada, and Airbus Helicopters. This is thanks in part to its low cost of doing business. Niagara, Canada is consistently ranked as one of Ontario's most competitive centres and regularly ranks as one of the most cost-competitive regions across 115 North American cities, with operating costs as low as $1.37 per square foot. It's also in the top 10 for cost competitiveness in manufacturing and in the top 3 for digital services. Niagara, Canada wants your business. In addition to participating in numerous provincial and federal funding programs, Niagara Region partners with its municipalities to offer a range of financial incentives to developers, investors, and business owners. These include reduced property taxes, significant reductions in development charges, and duty and tariff exemptions on imported goods. Our economic development staff can also help you access and evaluate a wide variety of other municipal, provincial, and federal programs that can benefit your residential, commercial, industrial, or agricultural project. Get Niagara working hard for you. Contact us today to get started.
Thank you for that. No more movies? And I'm going to ask the committee if we can let Councillor Height go first with his question, because I know he has to leave for a very important duty, so. Yes.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. No.
Have it recorded.
It's a said so.
Marvelous presentation. Can we get a list of all those tapes? I'm on your website trying to find some of them. It might be advantageous for us to be able to have those links. That way we can send them out to people. All of us are have some friends and involved in different industries in Niagara, and some of these will be pertinent to them, to their success, that they have something available to them, and we can spread the word, and it would be worthwhile having access to it, I think.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I know, but I didn't want you to miss your engagement and your words. Councillor Dart, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think in answer to your question, I think they're already on here. Are they not?
Is every video, there's 2 websites, NiagaraCanada.com and Niagara.Canada.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both have a video section. One is under media and one is under Niagara Stories.
It's right here,
all the
Brian.
videos are there. We also have a video channel, which I will share, and that has every video between both sites in one place.
Good. Thank you.
That's fine. Yeah, and there is a divide, so not all videos show up in both places. But some show up in both. Again, it's about the audience and the message.
So my question is, when you had, through you, Chair, when you had your thing up, your version of it up here, and I looked on the website, you had a couple of bars across the top with links, and you mentioned some of them, data and all that. I can't find them on the website.
On which particular website?
Either one. Niagara Canada and Welcome Niagara Canada.
If you are on a mobile by any chance or on a tablet, so the menu won't be across the top, it converts to a bar. So the menu is on the top left-hand side. You're in a mobile mode, and I will open up the menu and everything is there.
Thank you. My
Okay,
question.
answered?
Yes.
Great. Councillor Mapes.
Very much. The previous group that presented that left right away, what's the relationship that you have with that group?
The outcome of that report will drive the messaging, the content that goes onto this website. So right now we have chosen 4 strategic priorities or 4 sectors, but very well we could come out of this that we should be focusing on different sectors. So the strategic plan will direct the content and the future of this website.
But that was the Economic Development Department that presented and left, and this is the economic development. I find that awkward.
Correct.
Okay.
We're very closely aligned.
Yeah, okay. Who did the website? Who ultimately are the 27 companies won the bid to win the website?
Loud and Clear from Niagara, Canada.
And then who was the second group? You said two groups were?
Yeah, the second group was the group that produced the video. That is Signature Video Group, and they were based out of Mississauga, Ontario.
Okay, so how much was the website?
The website was, both websites and the marketing strategy was $175,000.
Okay, and they did that work between when and when?
They did that work between basically we started February 1st on contract till today.
Okay, and then who did the package?
That was Loud and Clear as well.
And what's the plan for distribution of the package?
Okay, so what you have here is a real complete package, and I would never assume that an impossible investor would get something like this, because what we've done it in such a way that it can be very sector specific. So if you're meeting with a manufacturer investor, you can take just that 2-page manufacturing profile and maybe the pieces that are important to them, incentives, foreign direct investment, lifestyle, and hand them one package. Those one-pagers are being translated into 10 different languages as well, so that allows us some flexibility when it comes to meeting with an investor. And then there's one book that if you wanted to give them the whole shebang, there is a 24-page book that you could hand someone that covers all sectors and all benefits of being in Niagara.
Okay, so what's the ongoing relationship with Loud and Clear?
So we have a relationship where at the end of this launch, we have so many hours that we can have their services up until the end of 2018. And then we also have a contract with them for 2019 for the hosting of the website and also providing us with a certain level of work when we need it. But I believe the majority of the work going forward will be done by an internal communications team. So all of this assets, these final products are being provided to us, and we have the keys, and then we can continue this. And we can stay on brand and stay on point because we have that brand guideline that helps us navigate that.
Okay. Why would we outsource hosting? We have our own infrastructure.
I think it comes down, well, there's two main reasons. One is capacity. And we have an excellent team who by all means have the capability of doing this, but to build all of this in the time frame that we needed to meet funding criteria was just impossible. But also speaking of funding criteria, they do fund us to build these products, but not for our own internal resources. Those funding is designed for us to outsource and find the experts that we need. We can't necessarily hire someone with those dollars. They're meant to build.
No, I understand the outsourcing, the creation, creative side and all that, but why the hosting is, it's surprising me that we would be outsourcing the hosting.
Oh, we do host our own Niagara region website, but it is not run on a WordPress environment, and we don't actually have the capability to host this website internally.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could you, everyone remember to speak through the chair, please? It just makes it easier. And Mr. Raymond, could you answer for me, following up on Councillor Maeve's comments, how much funding you've received from the provincial, federal governments, other funders to contribute to this project?
So we're still doing those calculations now because we're still spending and still receiving. But by the time this is all said and done, almost half has been funded through provincial, federal, as well as partners through Niagara Workforce Planning Board as an example.
So when you say half, exactly?
Roughly $200,000.
Right. Well, thank you. That's important for us to know as well, I think. Thank you. Councillor Beatty.
I leafed through this booklet while you were talking and looked at the videos. Truly, there's two Niagaras. There's the post-industrial Niagara that a lot of adults have a negative feeling about. All the things we used to have, the Atlas Steel, the paper mills, all of those industries that are gone. And they're not being replaced by big entities in terms of stuff. But when I went through this material, I felt a lot better about being in Niagara. I really did. And I think not only is this information valuable for potential immigrants and external businesses and enterprise individuals coming to Niagara, but I think it's a story that should be told to our youth in terms of a recognition. This is the Niagara that you're in. You're in a Niagara that's in transition, and it's on the move. a lot of really great stories are there. And I would recommend that economic development even consider approaching Cogeco and our local media for instant, like you got many of these are cartoons, you got the numbers, okay, the dramatic numbers that are there. I think there's a lot can be done by self-promotion just within Niagara for a feel better recognition of who we are and who we're becoming, more importantly. So I thank you for all the work that's happened, but it's a story that needs to be told and told and told.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for positive comments because it's a very positive story. Chair Caslin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, it's another positive story about Niagara. I'm just, can you help me link the two initiatives together between what we heard in the past presentation and this one again?
Absolutely. So it's safe to say that the economic development website that we created is as it is today. But once we've completed this project and we have a new perhaps vision or strategic direction, we'll be taking those and we'll be putting them into the website. So the website is never a complete project. As new data comes available, it's fed to the website. As a new direction or new sector is identified, it's added to the website. And it's really just a living document that keeps up to date with everything economic development is doing.
For fear of losing the continuity, I'd hate to see this operate in silos and then lose the connectivity,
Yes.
lose the connection, lose the value between the two, because I do think there's more links than just that between the two groups, but I can see that already that they're operating separately. So I'm just wondering how we're going to knit that fabric together.
Yeah, I think, yes, Director Coons.
Through you, Madam Chair. We're actually working really closely together. It's not perhaps coming off because the two presentations are separate. We felt it was important to get the website out there to promote Niagara. So rather than hold up the whole marketing process and the website development and everything until the master plan was finished, we felt it was best to go with what we knew at the moment. But we'll certainly, there'll be total integration between the material that's there and the direction that comes out of the plan and our marketing materials. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And through you, Madam Chair, I know the initiatives are a little bit different, but this one in particular, how do we know we're successful? What are the performance measures that we're going to monitor as a council, as an oversight body, to ensure that the dollars that we're investing here, the initiative, the good news that we're hearing, what is the quantity? What is the value of that? How do we?
The measurables.
Yeah.
You're looking.
Through the chair. So within the strategic marketing plan, in the exhibits, which is the third section in that plan, we actually do talk about measurement and exactly what it is we're going to measure in terms of effectiveness of the marketing strategy. But you're right, sometimes you can't take the marketing strategy and then say how many jobs did we create. There is a handoff between the effectiveness of a marketing strategy and the effectiveness of our business practices or effectiveness of the community. So developing the effectiveness of the marketing strategy, that's in the plan. Developing how effective this was moving the community forward, that does take a lot of work, and it's not necessarily immediately identifiable, and it's certainly not in the short term.
Thank you again. We heard a lot of good information from our planning department person, and name escapes me right now, but he gave all the statistics recently. There were a couple, so there was Blake. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Blake did a marvelous job of giving us all the statistics. So I know the detail is there. I know that the detail is there behind it. I think a lot more effort needs to be put forward in connecting that to the detail that we need. To simply put an input in without the expectation of an output is probably not going to have the same value as if we measured it. And again, I go back to you really can't manage if you don't measure. So I think if we could do that and link it together with the previous presentation, I think we get a lot more traction and a lot more for value for our dollar.
And I'm sure there are short-term and longer-term measurables as well. So but we're relying on our acting director to make sure that the connectivity is there and that the measurables are there for council.
They don't change. Number of jobs added to Niagara.
Right.
Number of dollars invested.
Right.
That's it. Thank you.
ROI. Thank you. Councillor Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to refer to the one booklet that's in here. It says Immigrate to Niagara. And as I leaf through this book, I noticed two things that maybe are not quite there in this book, in my opinion. Under a little bit of a deeper dive into the book, I did find page 13, which says immigrate here, getting settled, and it refers to the settlement worker. In this book, I would like to see more of the multiculturalism here in Niagara. We have a festival that happens every year in St. Catharines, and it really showcases our multiculturalism. That's the first thing. Second thing is, one thing that I find that we still don't have here in Niagara, and I know that the commissioner is working very hard on that, is the banks, the foreign banks here. I don't really believe that we have a foreign bank here in Niagara, and maybe the commissioner can expand on that.
We had, through you, Madam Chair, some initial dialogue with one of the major Asian banks in terms of what the threshold would be to establish a branch or a presence here. And what we learned, first of all, we learned a lot just in terms of what the expectations are, but we learned that, we're not quite ready for that.
Okay.
But it did result in what I would say a virtual presence. So as a result of that, they put some products in the Brock campus so that foreign students could actually access their international accounts on campus. So, it's small steps, and it's a process in terms of establishing relationships, and at some point in time, when there's a business case and a threshold, they'd be happy to locate here. Now, that's on the consumer side. On the investment side, we learned that they're already here.
Okay.
So when you see some of the big international investors coming, they're coming with international financing, backing them up, whether it's in the winery industry, whether it's in the visitation industry. So, and we're starting to see that a little bit in the development industry. So we're seeing the international money coming through the investment channel. The consumer side isn't quite there. Probably, it could be even a generation away, frankly. But we have to keep nurturing that sort of virtual access to facilitate, the newcomers that are coming in accessing their resources that may be offshore.
And I guess my last question is, and I want to get a handle on this, do we have any countries wanting to set up their economic development portfolios here in Niagara? Do you understand what I mean by that? Like a portal? Yeah, like a portal. Like, does the country of Istanbul want to come over here and put in something in Niagara so that is a closer conduit through their government ours? I just picked that out of the hat, so.
Val? Yeah, Val's going to give it a go.
I'll give it a go.
Just curious.
I think the straightforward answer at the moment is no.
Okay.
I would suspect that if a country does come, they would probably head to Toronto to have, foreign economic development offices do have presences around the world.
Right.
They usually go into large population concentrated areas. They usually decide where they're best, which is what we would do as well if that was our model. They usually decide where their best opportunity is. We haven't been approached by anybody, and I suspect in the first instance they would go to the GTA, go to Toronto.
Okay, fair enough. That's a fair answer. I just wonder certain things like this. I'm just curious about it because, post-war 1945, 1950, why did such a large Dutch contingency of people come to Niagara? What do we know about our past that said you had such a large contingency of Dutch people? Why did... Pardon me? No, I know, I understand Canada liberated, but why did they come to Niagara and not go anywhere else in Ontario? And maybe if we can, reach out to those people and find out things like that, maybe we can have a better job of doing immigration. And immigration is very important to us. The commissioner said that. We're looking, in order to reach that 610,000 people by the year 2041, we're counting on immigration coming to Niagara. So just wondering.
Right. And thank you for that. And just on a much more mundane level, you're talking about banks. I'm thinking grocery stores where people can, that are culturally serving people. Maybe some Niagara entrepreneurs can start there, and the banks will come as we grow. But thanks. That's from a woman's perspective, too.
And very good point, Madam Chair, and that is absolutely the type of things that Councillor Hodgson is working on with the Food and Farm Alliance through the Greater Golden Horseshoe, is to create that conduit and create those grocery stores for all the different immigrants across Ontario. So
Exactly.
he's a very good advocate for that, Councillor Hodgson.
Right, thank you. Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Just to the grocery stores, I note the Fresco on Thoroldstone in Niagara Falls has quite a range of goods that aren't found elsewhere. So it is coming, and it's coming slowly, and I think it's based on the population. My question, there's lots been said, so I'm just going to ask about the Know It. I don't see it in any of your documents. Why Know It? I know you want to make it, grow it, move it, build it. Why Know It?
So in part of the marketing strategy, we defined our key sectors with Grow It, agriculture, Make It, manufacturing. So you get that point there. Through our Why Niagara, we also have Live It, and we have Save It and Create It. And so all these pieces combined tell individual stories. Know It is sort of the shell that covers them all. So then the 24-page book that would cover everything is Know It, and everything else is within that. And is part of the marketing strategy.
So are we finding that people don't know us? Is that why you're saying it? It's like overt. Yeah. You know what? People don't know Niagara. I mean, we had that conversation earlier this morning with the customer service. People don't know what the region does, and they're kind of okay with it.
Through the chair.
With what the region does.
I'm excited you asked that question because that has a lot to do with it. So I think it's safe to say everyone in the world has heard of Niagara.
Yeah.
They know Niagara Falls, and that's all they know. And we want to tell them the story they don't know. So the foot in the door is Niagara. And they're like, oh, okay, I know Niagara. I want to go there. I know someone who's been there. And it's like, okay, well, let us tell you what you don't know yet.
Right.
You need to know it. It's not just the falls. It's not just wine. It's everything.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Chair Councillor.
Just on that point, I just wanted to add, and I've said this before, I just wanted to add one more time. Thank you for recognizing me for a second time. But at the bike show in Toronto, when I was there volunteering, watching people go by, it's really amazing to see. I invite anybody to do that. In the past couple of years, it's been amazing to watch people identify who Niagara is and where Niagara is, and start. I can see the conversation starting as they're approaching the booth. They're talking to one another. That's Niagara. That's all about Niagara. So there's a real buzz that's happening in not only here but in Toronto and surrounding areas, and people are getting the message and they're wanting to know more about it. So thank you for that. Yeah.
So thank you very much to the whole team. Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Great presentation, great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to what is the top of the agenda on your pages. PDS 28, the official plan amendment number 19, St. Catharines Go Transit. And we have a presentation by Alexander and Patrick. If they could come forward, please. Welcome, gentlemen.
And just to remind the committee, Alex Morrison is a planner with the region, and Patty Kennedy is our lead consultant on the 4 GO station secondary plans.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Committee. Alex and I have a fairly short presentation to walk you through a few highlights around the St. Catharines GO Station area secondary plan. You may recall that we've been here a few times before. This is presentation 3 of 4 of the 4 secondary plans that we've been working on around the GO stations in Niagara. So you will recall from past presentations that this secondary planning exercise is an opportunity to leverage the provincial and regional transit investments being made in Niagara. This is a big opportunity to proactively plan the neighborhoods and the spaces around those transit station areas. The province directs municipalities to plan for intensification around its GO station areas. And so the secondary plan is one of the best mechanisms to really start thinking about the long-term future, how change can occur, what type of change would we like to see in these places. This exercise as a planning process has to conform to the province's a couple of the province's key provincial documents, the provincial policy statement and places to grow plan. So this secondary plan for St. Catharines, like the others, have been prepared to conform with the policies of those plans. From a process perspective, we are at the tail end of a 6-phase process that we've been working on since 2015, and a very collaborative exercise with City of St. Catharines, stakeholders and members of the public. And you can see in the diagram noted that there's been a healthy amount of engagement and public debate and discussion on the plan and the plan elements. This slide here shows you some of the details in terms of attendance. You'll note we had 4 formal public events, 2 public information centers, a public open house, and a statutory public meeting at City Council. We had quite a healthy number of people attend in person and give us their comments on the plan. We also, through online surveys, through email and other vehicles, got feedback as well. Now, one of the unique aspects of this planning exercise was because of the overwhelming amount of people who wanted to be involved. We had that second public event at Ridley College. We had almost 139 people sign in, way more people attend than they sign in. So it was a really massive turnout for a secondary plan exercise. And there was direction from, I think, the City Council after that we do some focus group with representations from the neighborhood. So this is the proactive advisory group that was comprised of a selection of residents from the neighborhood and business owners that we met with in addition to this 3 times to work through the policies and some of the key pinch points in the plans, because there was some debate about some of the elements of the plan that I'll talk a little bit about. This map is just intended to show you the limits of the secondary plan area. It's about over 300 hectares in size. It's centered on the current Via Rail station, and it's very close to the downtown and includes a variety of existing uses, including stable residential neighborhoods, Ridley College, the Louth Street Power Center, and a few other uses. So some of the issues that came up along the way through the planning process were the desire to protect existing stable residential neighborhoods. You'll note this is not a unique concern in the context of all the work we've been doing. All the plans had this concern, and so we had a number of vehicles to deal with it in sort of specific ways, whether it was recognizing the existing low-density neighborhoods. So intensification is not focused on those low-density neighborhoods, it's focused on other areas. This study also recommends a detailed traffic calming or traffic management study for the lands around the station to help deal with infiltration. We'll talk about that if there's questions later. There was direction and desire to maintain and utilize that existing Via Rail station building, and policy does outline the desire to keep this iconic and important heritage building and function to the extent that a plan can control something of that nature. There was a desire to see transition in building heights, and so we do have a building heights plan that shows where density should be concentrated and how the heights should be transitioned as you work out from the lands around the station area. There is over 75 hectares of existing designated employment lands next to the station area, and so those are being maintained. And there was some desire through the process from some landowners expressed to see conversion and different uses there. That's not an exercise where we can do that. The province's policies require that to go through the MCR process, so that has been clarified through this exercise. And a big thing, it was also improving access and circulation to the secondary plan. This is quite a detailed plan for transportation and active transportation improvements and streetscape improvements and all these elements intended to make the station function better as development, as change happens over time. I'm going to let Alex provide you just a few highlights about the amendment modifications.
Thank you, Patty. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. The purpose of this slide in front of you is just to show an overview of the types of modifications that are proposed to the secondary plan. In total, the region staff have recommended 97 modifications. Although that may sound like a lot, these are very minor in nature and do not alter the intent of the overall secondary plan policy framework. As shown in the example on the right, a lot of the modifications are just used to help clarify, ensure alignment and consistency between the references within the secondary plan itself, as well as to its associated documents. Region staff have worked very closely with the City of St. Catharines staff to ensure that everyone is comfortable with and supportive of the plan, and that's shown within Appendix 3 of Report PDS 28-2018. And if you'd like to see all the modifications that we're proposing to the secondary plan, that's shown within Appendix 1 of that same report. In regards to some of the next steps for the secondary plan, it's expected that the plan will be endorsed during this afternoon's Planning and Economic Development Committee. And then once endorsed, we can then pass it along to Regional Council for final approval. That's expected to occur on July 5th. And then following Regional Council's decision, staff then would circulate a notice of decision to applicable party stakeholders. And that would occur on July 6th. The stakeholders are outlined within Section 17 of the Planning Act, and that also signifies the commencement of a 20-day appeal period. Anyone who's eligible within the Planning Act specifications can appeal the plan at that point in time. And then if that 20-day period concludes and there is no appeals that are to the plan, it becomes in force and effect and then ratified into the city's Garden City official plan. And that concludes our presentation. At this point, we'd like to
Well, thank you so much to both of you. And could I have a motion, please, to put report PDS 28 on the floor? Councillor Dart and Councillor Luciani. And any questions or comments to either the presentation or the report? Councillor Maves? Okay. All right, thank you. Councillor Maves.
Just a question. I was at the Glendale secondary plan, district plan for a bit yesterday, and part of that talked about a potential GO transit stop there. How does this plan impact one way or the other that opportunity?
I'll take a stab at it, but then maybe Diana can take it a little further. So the 4 secondary plans for the GO stations that we're working on right now were identified in 2011 through Metrolinx's ESR, so their environmental assessment where they identified potential transit areas serving Niagara. When it comes to Glendale, we're talking about a potential new station, whether it's in the Glendale area or in St. Catharines. So that would be a separate new initiative to identify a potential new station location, a stop, if you will. So it's really de-linked from these 4. These 4 were already sort of put forward by Metrolinx in 2011. We just reacted to that by moving them forward by the secondary plan process.
The ones that we're doing the secondary plans for now, if they go forward, would they in any way disqualify a potential stop or are they on the route? I'm just trying to figure.
No, so it's it's obviously on the route, and I would suggest that a station serving the Glendale area, Niagara on the Lake, would be beyond the time frame of these 4. And Diana, I don't know if you want to comment further.
Through you, Madam Chair, our goal in Niagara was always to get GO Train to come to Niagara first. What you see in other municipalities too is once you start building up that ridership and start doing additional business cases to identify and to work with the province, I could see in the future that we would be going to the province to identify other areas where we think potential stops should occur. Glendale one is perhaps something that we would look at. We want to ensure it doesn't impact the stations that we're recommending, but you see this elsewhere throughout the Lakeshore West line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate the work and the explanations. I know when some other secondary plans have come through, maybe not lately, but in the past, the province has often appealed them and come up with different language. So again, trying to keep the sentiment, but have the language. So can we just hear about the provincial involvement in this plan?
Diana.
Through you, Madam Chair, we've involved the province we've sent them all the draft copies of every single policy for Grimsby, Lincoln, as well as St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. We have worked with them on some of the secondary plan language. St. Catharines in particular, they did not have any concerns with regards to the policies because we are in compliance with provincial legislation.
Okay, that's great to hear. I'm pleased about that. I appreciate the answer on the employment lands. That was my question about the area around the station specifically. And there are maps, I don't know if it's in this presentation or elsewhere, about this, but I was wondering about I'll call it upzoning of some of the lands, so to prepare for the future use. Is it possible to point out those areas that have been upzoned or in anticipation? One would think that some of the employment, those are the maps, some of the employment lands would be ideal for upzoning, but we heard that we can't do that because of the regulations of the province. Upzoning for mixed use and residential, and really we're talking about a hub here around the station. And then I note that there's also some lands in the historic, I'll call it historic homes area right next to the station that we're trying to honor. So can we just hear about which of the areas where there might have been an upzoning so that it's ready to go? Should development say, hey, I want to develop around the station, where can they go?
Patty?
Through you, Madam Chair. Let's see if I get this to work here. Does this work? Okay. So this yellow here, along here, and back in here, these are what we were describing as the stable residential neighborhoods.
Right.
They haven't changed. We're not upzoning or changing their use. The lands, the first area that did get increased permissions and building heights is here. This is where the power center is. The idea was that in the fullness of time, over the long term, these areas could change and could redevelop. But that was more of the longer term aspiration. So that's one area. The second area that did get changes in permissions and some adjustments is the lands that are right on the station area and in the vicinity of the station area. Those had some heights and permissions on them, but they've got some additional permissions on the north side of Ridley Street. The other area, this was always envisioned here, this pink was always envisioned in the St. Catharines official plan as a mixed-use area, but I think when you see it in combination with some of those other permissions, it now provides a bigger critical mass for density around the station area. The final one I will mention is that we didn't change the employment permissions, but there is up to 6-story as a right permission in there now, proposed in this. The current OP allows for an unspecified amount, and through the public process, there was a desire to have that explained, like what is the maximum height for an employment use down here. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and that's kind of the area that I was thinking about. So the heights would be there, but maybe not the mixed-use provisions, and that has to be done under a different process. I understand that. What wasn't talked about, Madam Chair, and it's on the other one, is the building heights, 20 stories along the 406 corridor there, which I found a little odd in the sense of I would have thought that they may have been concentrated or want to have been concentrated around the station. Can we just hear about the rationale as to why they're there? And I believe that's, it's not, is that employment lands or is that a mixed-use land right now?
Through you, Madam Chair. So these lands here, the dark purple, have the highest height permissions in the plan here along the corridor. They're currently low-rise commercial. We tested a bunch of different heights through the public process. We tested 20 stories right on the transit station, and there was a lot of concern and a lot of pushback. So we have a kind of a varied approach to how we tackled it. These lands, you may recall, like as you drive along highways and highway corridors, there are places where you can get some height along the corridor. And so this is one of those locations that we're not going to have big shadow sunlight impacts on adjacent users. So that's why it gets a little bit extra height permission there.
The intersection that's right there is one of the busiest, I think, in Niagara, and in Public Works we had that whole presentation about the lights and all of that. It will be an interesting intersection should it get built out in the way that's anticipated here. I understand the rationale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dart.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Maeve's questions. Do the rails that are going from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls, does any of that go through Glendale area? Glendale east or west of the canal?
Through you, Madam Chair, the train that is on Taylor Road, where Walker's, Walker's has a driveway into the landfill, that's the line.
Okay.
So that's potentially a site, and of course, there's a number of potential sites actually on the west side of the canal in St. Catharines, both of which locations would adequately serve Glendale.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know where the rail went, so.
Right. Thank you. Chair Caslin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just through you, just a couple of questions. The Ridley College had been here in the past to talk to us about some other plans that they might have had. Are they included in the consideration of anything that's being done here?
Through you, Madam Chair, we've worked really closely with Ridley College. I know of the plans that you are referring to. We have been working with them to dedicate a road into the transit station through their lands, and those discussions are going very well. They are looking, their property, which is, where you would see the T on, is now being proposed as mixed-use development, and that really works well with their future plans for that land.
Okay, thank you. Brings me to my next question, Madam Chair, is access to the area, and I'm sure that through public engagement, it's come up a number of times about getting better access to the train station and facilities around that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, I'll take a stab at answering this, and Diana may want to add some more detail to it. So, firstly, from a automobile perspective, there's multiple ways to access the station area, and there'll be a proposed new access, as Diana was mentioning, off of Ridley Road in the mid-block that would allow for a cleaner access and won't force traffic through the neighborhood. It's the first step, I think. The second step is to do a traffic calming study, and that may result in a few physical adjustments or street closures of these elements to sort of filter traffic out of the neighborhood and into the station area. There's a whole wide range of walking and cycling improvements intended to get people on all the surrounding streets into the station area. And Diana may wish to speak to the St. Paul Street West bridge adjustments, and I'll let her.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, one of the big accomplishments of the secondary plan was that we also did a transportation impact analysis around the transit station. And the reason we did this is we knew that we were changing the land uses, and we wanted to ensure that we had the right transportation infrastructure to get, cars, cyclists, and pedestrians to the transit station. So our main point of access for the car is to get an access road off of Ridley. So trying to drive that traffic through Ridley Road and then to the transit station. We also know that we do have some issues with the connection at Great Western and Ambrose and car traffic infiltration through that neighborhood. So we're looking at changing how Great Western connects into Ambrose, but still provides access into the transit station. And we've been very communicating with the residents about that. They do know that we are going to be doing an environmental assessment through our public works here at Niagara Region for St. Paul Street West to improve that bridge. So all of this is occurring at the same time to ensure that on opening day, the transit station is operational as well as the infrastructure supporting it.
Thank you. And I think the proximity to the Meridian Center and to the PAC and the downtown is as close as we're going to get. I don't think we could get any closer. The track doesn't run any closer. So I think that's probably the best we're going to do. I'm hoping that the improved access will definitely be a big consideration, as well as parking and all those things that we talked about when we're designing hubs for example, Grimsby. When we talk about timing, has any of the engineering been done in that regard? Is there anything that Council can see?
So through you, Madam Chair, at last week's Planning Committee, there was also a memo where we highlighted what the functional designs were for the Grimsby GO station as well as St. Catharines GO station that was approved by Metrolinx. So they have a two-stage process where they, at a high level, show where there's going to be parking, show access points in, show where there's going to be where the trains will line up on the tracks to load and unload passengers. So that was circulated to the Planning Committee, and it showed the conceptual plan for St. Catharines. We've also been targeting when we're going to be doing our environmental assessments for St. Paul Street West, as well as communicating that with Metrolinx to ensure that, you know, the improvements on St. Paul Street West are aligning with what's happening to the improvements on Ridley Road, as well as construction of the improvements to the GO Transit station.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, every time we've met with Metrolinx and GO Train, we've offered assistance and we offered our money first. Have we been involved with any of the engineering of the St. Catharines or the Niagara Falls stations? And if so, what have we done? What have we done as a region?
Diana?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, we have been involved and we've met several times as our engineering staff as well as planning staff have given our recommendations to the design that Metrolinx has put forward.
Now, the last and the tough question, are we going to be ready if the province agrees to pull the schedule ahead to 2021?
We're trying to be ready for 2021. We keep saying that number.
Thank you.
If you think it enough times, maybe it will happen. Councillor Maves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you,
yes,
to either the presenters
thank you,
or Diana.
Thank you, Councillor. You heard my words.
I did. Just if someone could point out on either one of the 4 color diagrams, where's the principal parking going to be for the station, and is it going to be tiered? How's that work? And that...
Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps I will point this out, and Diana, you can speak to it if you'd like. So, there. Better?
Through you, Madam Chair, if you can, where the hand is, you can see the outline of the CN-owned lands. Based on the 2011 environmental study report, Metrolinx is looking to keep parking spaces just north of the tracks within the existing CN ownership so that they do not, at this point, have to do an addendum to their EA approvals. I think approximately it fits 200 parking spaces at this time. We do know that Metrolinx is trying to minimize the amount of parking they need for opening day and really try to improve transit ridership to this, the transit station, as well as getting people to walk there and cycle there as well. We have indicated to Metrolinx that should we need more parking spaces, we really would like to see some sort of parking structure there instead of a sea of asphalt. But at this point, they do have enough spaces for opening day.
How many would that be? Because everywhere I see a transit station, they're always expanding the parking around it. So
through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exact number, but I could get back to you. I know it's about, I want to say 220 parking spaces.
how many acres is that lined area where they own? That on the diagram beside, not the orange one, the one with blue and green, where the T is, and it's got all the lines. Is that the?
Commissioner has a comment.
Yeah.
Is that the Metrolinx property?
I stand to be corrected, but the memo where you provided the Metrolinx's final design concept has all that, right? So when was that circulated?
Through you, Madam Chair, it was at last planning committee. So if you go onto the agenda for last planning committee, you can actually find the memo. Oh, yeah. It's PDS.
So the information is there in
that. PDSC 23.
The commissioner is going to look it up for you, Councillor.
Oh, we have it right here. It is 221 cars, so it's close.
Okay, so on that diagram with the T, and it's got the lines in that area, is that the Metrolinx owned property? That whole area? It's called Transit Station Site Overlay.
No, through you, Madam Chair, half of that is owned by Ridley, and well, 3/4 is owned by Ridley, and the remaining portion is owned by CN.
We're going to pull up the design from the last report, so just give us a couple seconds.
What property, while we're waiting, what property does Metrolinx actually own in that area?
Through you, Madam Chair, they don't own any property within that area right now. They would, because they have environmental assessment approval, they have the ability to acquire that property either through willing seller, willing buyer, or expropriation.
So it's either owned by CN or Ridley right there.
Yeah, it actually, we do know it's owned by CN, the portion that they have approvals on.
Okay, and we have that last report up on the screen now, Councillor. Opening day.
Sorry, I was looking at the Grimsby numbers. So the numbers that are approved here for parking spaces are 165 cars. They also have 4 spaces for barrier-free. And Caputo is at the Kiss and Ride. It's 16 cars to drop off and pick up passengers.
Okay.
Councillor Mapes, you're satisfied? Is that okay? Seeing no more questions, I'm just going to say that we are very well served here at the region. We have employees and consultants who are dedicated, they're learned, and they're ever so engaging. So thank you very much. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And it's carried. Moving on to 29. The province's draft agricultural impact assessment guidance document. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for this report? Councillor Beatty, Councillor Hodgson, and questions, Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Specifically to section on page 7, part 5, description lands. When it talks about, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot here. My apologies.
Okay.
Go to page 9, I'm sorry. Page 9, section 3.4, description of mitigation measures. So I'm assuming then that staff have collaborated with our agricultural sector partners to better define what a distinct edge planning area is, because understanding it's a bit different when you talk about buffer zones, it's a bit different in the agricultural community because it actually impacts yield. So I'm hoping that there's some more definition put around that when we pass those comments on to the province, that it will be better reflected the uniqueness of the ag community. That was my one point. And I just want to know, when we talk about some of the other issues, and for example, when we talk about natural water courses as opposed to constructed drains, there's a distinct difference in the agricultural community when it comes to natural water courses and constructed drains and the impacts of naturalized vegetation that results in crop loss. So again, these are comments that have to be reflected in the document that we pass on to the province. Now, whether or not the province wants to accept the recommendations or accept the collaborative approach that we've taken with our agriculturists and our farmers, that's entirely up to them. But at the very least, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the ag sector's voices are heard and we're passing those comments on. So I just want to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the comments, Councillor Nunziata. We have started down a discussion path with OMAFRA on clarifying what their edge planning requirements are and whether they're always appropriate, and that was sort of where your first comment was headed with respect to section 3.4. Those measures are not always appropriate. Having someone put in a vegetative buffer that may impact a crop is not always a solution. So that's where that comment is headed. And then with respect to natural water courses versus drainage, we can continue to make comments and pursue that with the province and hope for the best result.
So that addresses that, and then like passing those on. The other issue I want addressed is certainly the topic of significant woodland. Now, within the green belt policy, significant woodland impacts the agricultural community because there is no exemption for agriculture when it comes to significant woodland. So it could be a hedge of trees in the most inappropriate area, and what that does is impacts yield. It has all kinds of implications. So again, another one of, for the best intentions and the best purposes, doesn't speak the same language as the agricultural community. And we have to find a better way to bridge that disconnect. And those were just 2 or 3 of the examples I wanted to use, but they're scattered throughout policy, and there's no fidelity between these policies. And unfortunately, the words and the voices of the ag community are being lost. And I don't know how many, maybe Councillor Hodgson can probably, answer this question. How many times have we had opportunities to respond to policy documents and to specific pieces of legislation up for discussion? And unfortunately, the policy that comes forward do not include the recommendations from the agricultural sector. And it happens over and over and over and over again, and there's growing frustration in the ag community. And I cannot stress that enough. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Easton.
Well, I'm so glad that I got back here just in time.
Yes.
Because we certainly should have some concerns about this report on one hand. On the other hand, it could be a great opportunity if we just get our act together, I mean provincially. So I'm looking for some research pilots that would actually engage some of the activities that need to take place when we start looking at how land is going to be used. Because if we do have development that abuts up against agricultural land, it's my opinion that the setback should be on the side of the developer, not on the side of the farmer. And if that doesn't happen, then there's not going to be much left of our farm. So that would be the first comment that I would make. However, the question that I have at the moment is around research and whether or not there's actually going to be applied research going on throughout the evaluation instead of people just sitting in an office telling us what they think might be the best solution. And to that end, Madam Chairman, I'm also looking for actually a hypothetical situation that could be applied to any number of these sections. I think I looked at 3.4, where a description could be made of how the recommendation would be applied and what it would look like so that we could actually have a discussion about that. Otherwise, it's going to be someone else's opinion on our land. So I'll just leave it with that. There's all kinds of things that we could comment on. I'm trying to look at this as an opportunity.
Right.
But there is a great deal of concern because it really is another set of regulations on private property.
Right. Same section that Councillor Nunziata was concerned with, I think, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the, oh yes, Councillor Marshall.
Just, I heard some legitimate, cogent questions and I didn't hear a response or an answer. So this goes, if endorsed, goes to council and then we all put up our hand and it's gone. Can we refer that section that was referenced by Councillor Nunziata and Easton and have some work done on it prior to next Thursday? That's not our normal practice, but I don't know if there's time urgency associated with this report,
right, or
not, or should it be deferred and have some further discussion specifically as it relates to agriculture.
Right, so that's 3.4. Eric, can you comment on this?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think by next Thursday we can make some additional comments on those sections and have that sent back. I think just for a further point of clarification on some of these items, in the current context where this would apply in the growth plan and in the Greenbelt plan, the cases where an agricultural impact assessment is something that would be required really applies to settlement boundary expansions, infrastructure corridors, so the creation of infrastructure corridors, and then large applications for aggregate quarry operations. In terms of a day-to-day type application of this policy set on sort of a private landowner, that's not the intention of what's being put forward here. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Nunziata?
I'll give the floor back to Councilor, but I just want to make a point on it. Then that has to be specifically conveyed in the language that people understand what the impact is. So I love that comment, but that has to be better conveyed.
Of course.
It is in relation to the aggregate discussion. And I think that inasmuch as aggregate can create congestion and irritations for us, that we really have to start looking at it as a serious piece of business that goes on in a number of our communities. And so I recently attended the aggregate rehabilitation tour and saw some absolutely incredible things that are going to be happening, particularly one down in Niagara on the Lake, but actually all over. We were in Pelham as well. I think an understanding of what that means to our communities economically is very important. And I really think the worst thing that could possibly happen is that an application come forward for expansion and we just end up with a great big brouhaha about it without really understanding the impact that it's going to have on the growth and development of Niagara. So I think that piece as well, it's very hidden in here.
So maybe we need different wording and
I think it needs to be,
emphases.
I think it needs to be brought out so that it's not seen as something that's really peripheral to this at all.
So Eric, we'll leave that with you. Can we have that out to us perhaps by,
Can we make it for Friday?
for Friday?
Friday file?
Okay, that's good. And maybe put it in the correspondence?
Yeah.
And Anne Marie, is that appropriate? Okay, and have that put, Councillor Marshall, is that? Okay, so we'll look forward to that. Councillor Quirk.
And I appreciate that going in correspondence so that all members of the council could see it, but could I also ask for that specific document to be sent to this committee membership as a standalone email, because I'm the first to admit I don't get through all the correspondence in a timely manner, but this will be a pretty critical discussion to be had at next council.
Okay, so to the committee as well. Thank you. So we'll get it two ways. Yeah. No further questions. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And it's carried. And now 5.3 has been withdrawn, and I'll look for a motion to accept 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5, please. Councillor Edgar, seconded by Councillor Dart. Any questions on any of those? Yes, Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I guess on two of them, and I would like to hear about the watercourse mapping. Regarding the ICOP Phase 2 audit report, we had a very fulsome discussion in the audit committee. I'm sorry, 6.4.
Right.
PDS C31. We had a very fulsome discussion. I think it was at audit, but we also had it elsewhere.
It was audit,
feels like.
yes.
I'm looking at Councillor Quirk. But there was one question, I asked a lot of questions, I'm not going to ask them today, but there's one question that I didn't ask, and I can't find it today, but I had it then, so I'm just hoping. My understanding is that when we looked at the incentives and they did a sampling of the incentives, they didn't look at all of them, but one of them that was excluded was the one for GE when they were looking at the industrial. And I just wondered why. You know, there was other industrial that were included, and that would seem to be the major one that we kind of won,
yes.
a significant one. So it stuck in my craw, and maybe staff can look into it. I understood that it was excluded.
Frank is here just for this.
Well, perfect.
We're glad to have you here, Frank.
So the
we don't have
background for other committee members, Madam Chair, is as they looked at the different incentives, they took a sampling. I did ask about the sampling, but the largest one, I would imagine, was excluded, and I just want to hear why that was excluded and if the results would change if it were included.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. It wasn't excluded necessarily. We did look at the application process. But as far as it being completed, well, it's far from being completed at this point. In other words, they are going to be opening very soon, as is reported in the media. But when we were doing our audit, it was still a few months out.
I see.
So they did receive some money. But the other point when it comes to GE is, you know, a lot of the money was tied to certain criteria, and those criteria have not been met yet. In other words, they haven't fully hired on their staff at this point, which was job creation was a major component.
Okay, so it's a timing issue. That really
It's
helps.
a timing issue.
Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate it. The next one is, unless there's anybody else on that, is the 6.5, the PDSC.
Could I remove 6.5 from that motion? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have included it with 6.3 and 6.4, because we need a different motion for this one.
All right, thank you.
The mover and
I'll
seconder.
await, I do want to just ask a question.
Yeah, of course. Mover and seconder, I don't know who they were.
30 and 31.
Edgar and Councillor, would you agree to that, please? So we'll just call the motion on 6.3 and 6.4. All in favor? Oh. I'm ahead of myself because it's 3:24. Councillor Nunziata? Which one?
Now.
Okay, so if Councillor Augustine, yeah, okay. So if I have the floor, Madam Chair?
Yeah, and which one are you speaking, 6.3?
PDS C31 2008 ICOP
Oh,
Phase 2 audit
okay,
report.
right.
So I read with great concern some of the initial observations. My host municipal council and staff passed on those same concerns to me. And I guess my greatest worry is that the further we go down this process, that somehow recommendations of scaling back or eliminating some of these programs that have been very, very successful for the town of Fort Erie as far as leveraging private sector dollars will be eliminated or disappear. And I don't want that to happen specifically for my host municipality. And I know there's other councillors that may feel the same way as far as the success of those incentive programs in their own communities. But I thought I needed to speak up and specifically convey that I am not in support of some of the findings within the report. I mean, I have a report from my host municipality, and they conducted their own internal audit and their own internal reviews, and they've costed things out, and they tell an entire different story about the success of the CIPs, facade improvements, downtown revitalizations, the leveraging of $1 of public sector money to $12 of private sector money. So I'm getting conflicting information from my host municipality and the successes of these programs and what I'm seeing in the audited report. And I just need to know that there's a mechanism that moving forward, this is not a fait accompli. And these incentives will not be disappearing without the explicit consent of all the host municipalities that have enjoyed the success.
I'll take a stab at it, Madam Chair. So clearly, the region is in the incentive business. So it's a core program, set of programs that we have. And I would ascribe to the fact that it's not going away. We're going to be in the incentive business as long as I can sort of imagine. So what really the audit sort of revealed is that and this is sort of like internally, I would say on the administrative bureaucracy side, we need some improvement in terms of the administration of the whole program, where it resides, how we consolidate it, how it's administered, et cetera. We need some rules and policies that are more robust than how we currently manage it. So that's kind of an internal thing that we are going to start looking at right away. With respect to the question of what does regional council want to accomplish with the incentive programs, that is something that's up to regional council, and that's why at the tail end of the memorandum, I suggested that there be a dedicated workshop in conjunction with the regional strategic priority development so that regional council can actually decide what it wants to accomplish. What I foresee is that you'll likely divide the incentives into sort of thematic groupings. Do you want to focus on economic prosperity? Do you want to focus on affordability? Do you want to focus on the public realm and urban experience? So you know that you have a pot of money of, say, $8 million. How do you want to distribute that among those thematic areas? And then from there, that's when we engage with the local municipalities and others to actually identify how to deliver that sort of incentive program to get the best bang out of our buck for what we invest in those areas. So I think it all sort of pivots around you know, the direction that's the new council will want to go with incentives, you know, early in the new year. So we've paused it until that point in time, Councillor Nunziata.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Now, for those municipalities that have the program still in place right now, I understand from my own municipality that there's another secondary plan that was just recently approved and ratified by the local area municipality and the region. And as such, part of that process of adopting a secondary plan is the opportunity to tap into more CIPs. So now, is that secondary plan and now those opportunities for that community, that neighborhood, are they off the table now to tap into the CIPs that the other 3 areas that have a secondary plan in the town of Fort Erie have?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the programs as they exist today will continue on until such time as the Regional Council modifies them. So I would say that no, like the opportunity, or yes, the opportunity is certainly still there for programs to come forward under the current programs. And likely if there's changes that the new council wishes to make, there'll likely be a transition period. So I would say, you know, for the balance of this year and certainly likely for 2019, it's going to be business as usual as far as the programs. And if council chooses to go in a different direction, it'll likely be post 2019.
So I think then that I can...
It's up to council.
So then I think that I can confidently pass on to Town of Fort Erie staff and Town of Fort Erie Council that they can in fact utilize the CIPs for existing secondary plans and the new one that just came on board.
Yeah, and in principle that is correct. The variable is our funding envelope here at the region. Like occasionally we run out of resources and then we require council approval to tap into reserves to continue funding programs. So that's the only caveat that I would put out there. It's within the financial resources that have been allocated annually. And that's why sort of as we get closer to the end of the year, because it's a first come, first serve type of initiative, as budget pressures mount, we put those on hiatus until such time as council releases additional resources.
So I'm trying to get to the bottom of whether or not the region is going to be a partner in the funding allocation of the incentive programs that are currently on the books. I understand that the town fronts money and then it goes to the region for the regional portion. I just want to know if the town is going to be left holding the bag without a funding partner for any of these programs.
Well, I don't think that's the intent, no.
I understand it's not the intent.
You know, as I said, the program is there, and it's, you know, the program is there. I'm not in control of whether, and our department isn't in control of whether council, regional council provides the funding to support the program. So provided the funding is there, the support to the local municipality is there.
Okay, so to that point, funding has already been allocated for 2018.
Yeah, so we're good for 2018.
Okay, but moving forward?
Council has to support the funding for 2019.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we can't preempt a future council.
No. We can't even preempt this one. Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'd just like to comment on PDSC 31-2018 because as Chair of the Audit Committee, I didn't get a chance to comment too much directly on it, but this is here for information purposes only. It's a process that the ICOP team is going through to look at the value, and I think if any councillor has some concerns about the future of the program, I suggest they look and look at the video recording of the committee and see Frank's presentation to committee when he went through all these programs. But to alleviate other concerns is where do we get the best bang for the buck? And some of these CIP programs, some of the smaller municipalities are not taking advantage of the ones that have a better bang for the buck because they can't afford their share. So one of the potential outcomes of this is that some of the small scale programs may be handed off to the local area municipalities so that the region with the greater fiscal capacity can handle the large scale ones and actually focus on the issues that are important to regional council for our region-wide priorities and let the local councils focus on those that are best in their priorities. So it doesn't change the programs that can be available and that are allowed to be available under provincial legislation in the CIP. What it does is maybe talk about who the funding partners are and whether it's a straight up 50-50 or if, say, for example, Grimsby wants to continue with its facade improvement program, then we would take on the role of that. And one of the comments that sort of hit home is we're spending a lot of time and resources on small $2,000, $2,500 grants that don't, oh, Shay's there too, sorry to see you sneaking there, that don't make a lot of sense for the region to be handling when the municipality can be doing it better, and we're cutting checks for $1,250 as our portion of it. So there are some potential outcomes, but at this point, there'll be recommendations coming to council for us to adopt or not adopt, but it doesn't change the fact that it's here for information purposes so that we have the appropriate background. And as Frank Maché indicated, it's one of our first true value for money audits done in-house, and I think it really speaks to the fact that of the $8 million plus that we spend in incentive programs, there are better ways and more efficient ways that we can be using the money, as well as some opportunities for streamlining the program. So I'm looking forward to seeing the recommendations when they come through.
Great, thank you, Councillor. So ready for the question on 6.3 and 6.4, all in favor?
I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on PDSC 31, 2018.
Well, let's have a recorded vote on both, is that, go ahead.
Vote is open.
We voted, are these separate or en bloc?
No, en bloc. Okay, thank you for that, it carries. And moving on to 6.5, PDS 28, could I please have a motion to receive and that it be directed to staff to respond from someone, Councillor Easton and Councillor Caslin, and questions. Councillor, no, Councillor Augustine, sorry.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Kind of two questions. The first is that there's a note here that says it had been included on the agenda as a result of being inadvertently omitted from the minutes from last meeting. So it was there, but it's not.
I'm going to let the clerk respond to that.
And the question is, do we need to adjust the minutes of last meeting, or is it okay to get it here, or put a note in last meeting to say it's now here?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Augustine. The item was not reflected in the minutes as part of the block that received the items for information. When we went back and reviewed the tape, Councillor Valpatti just indicated we're just going to take all these items. So there wasn't a specific mention, and in order to make it clear for everyone, and especially for the resident that sent in the correspondence, I felt it was better to add it to this agenda, and then it's on the official record.
Perfect. That's great. So we don't need to adjust it.
And if I can add, we've already initiated dialogue with the resident as well. So
that's great. Great to hear. The question is, I guess there's just if we can get a 2-minute update on the process. There's an interesting comment in the letter as I saw it that this was a secondary plan process that was mandated by the OMB, and now it seems to just be at the local level, not coming here as we saw some other secondary plan processes. and there's something in the official plan in terms of when a secondary plan comes to the region in terms of size, and this is double the size of that. So anyways, can we just hear an update as well on the timing? I understood something was going to come back in July to the city, I guess? Thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to ask Dave to supplement my comments in a second. So this is, of course, regarding the riverfront development application. And the essential question is, will the official plan amendment that the City of Niagara Falls approves be exempted from regional approval? And we have some rules around that. Generally speaking, if it's a municipally initiated secondary plan with significant regional interest, we act as the approval authority, just as you have seen today with the GO secondary plans. Occasionally, when there's a privately initiated official plan amendment that's specific to a individual development, and the regional issues have been addressed through the process, we exempt that from regional approval. Dave will provide some of the specifics around where we are with this process. I would say that that ultimate determination has not yet been made, but Dave can speak to it.
Councillor, City of Niagara Falls has endorsed a report to approve the official plan amendment. Our comments were, we asked for some changes, policy refinements. So Niagara Falls is refining the official plan amendment, providing it to us for review. We're happy with that. Then we would let them know the region is okay with the approval going to Niagara Falls. And I believe they're trying to get it on their agenda in July.
Thank you. Thank you. The mover and seconder for that, I know I had Easton and Caslin. Okay, and so the question, Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. I thought you were going to miss me.
Never.
It hurt my feelings. Through you, Chair, to whoever wants to answer this, where's the riverfront development located?
That's the former Thundering Waters.
Oh, we changed the name of it.
Yeah, so when it was being processed, if you will, Madam Chair, when it was being processed as a municipal-driven secondary plan, it was called Thundering Waters. And then the city and the proponent sort of pivoted and changed the strategy and went forward with a privately initiated application. They rebranded the project as Riverfront.
Another question. Is this something that the City of Niagara Falls can do on their own, or does it have to have our approval as a region?
I think, through you, Madam Chair, that's what Dave was referencing, that if the city can demonstrate compliance with regional policy and there's no significant infrastructure impacts to the region, we typically exempt those approvals. So that's sort of the foundational principle. So what Dave referenced is that they've prepared an official plan amendment. We've asked for it to be further refined to ensure that there's compliance with our planning policies, specifically around natural heritage. If they're able to do that, then Dave said that we may be in a position to exempt it from regional approval.
And who would decide whether or not those specifications had been met? Would it be up to us as a council to say, okay, you don't need our approval?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that's a decision that we make on the administrative side. So we actually have essentially a checklist and if and a policy around that. And if it meets the guidelines for that policy, then we provide the exemption at a staff level.
So then there'd be no way for us as a council to know whether or not staff had approved of this?
What we typically do, Madam Chair, is we inform the council through an information memo that a local council has adopted a planning amendment, and provide regional council with background information and the rationale for the exemption.
So we would know after the fact.
After the fact. Now, having said that, of course, it's a planning process, so there's statutory periods for appeals and what have you. If somebody believes that they're not, if they're aggrieved by the approval, or if there's an issue with respect to the process, you know, that opportunity is available to them in terms of an appeal within the notice period.
So our official stance as a council is we may or may not have anything to do with it.
The official, through you, Madam Chair, the official position of the council is that you have policies that dictate when an official plan amendment requires regional approval versus it's delegated to the local municipality. There's policies in our official plan for that, and we administer those. So essentially, if the local application meets official plan policies and regulations, and there's no significant infrastructure impacts, then we have the ability to exempt that approval at the from the local level.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, and thank you for the question, because I didn't get it either. Can I have this amended to say formerly known as Thundering Waters?
The mover and the seconder, Councillor Easton? Councillor Caslin?
I don't see a problem with it, but I don't know that we have the authority to change the name of somebody else's property.
No, we don't. I'll let the clerk speak.
But I didn't ask for permission to change the name. I wanted to reflect that it was formerly known as Thundering Waters.
Through you, Madam Chair, the official plan amendment, it's called the Riverfront Community. That's the name of the application.
I appreciate what's been said, but for clarity, we talked about transparency and everything else. I have no quarrel with the commissioner with respect to his response on this, or the chair for that matter. I'm only asking for what it was formerly. There's been times in my life I wanted to change my own name. Wasn't able to do it for obvious reasons, but formerly known as is very common in the newspaper. Can I ask once again that I wanted what it was formerly referred to or formerly known as?
Well, let's put it on the floor as an amendment, Councillor. Yes. So the amendment is formerly known as Thundering Waters. And could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Marshall, Councillor Edgar. Of course, you may speak to the amendment.
So,
Councillor Nunziata.
thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a little concerned because we just heard an explanation as far as why the name was changed, because of the negativity that was attached to that property. So that was a decision made by the proponent to change the name, and I have no idea why you would conflate the issue of transparency. This was a conscious decision because of the negative connotation that was surrounding that property. And now this council wants to be pejorative and wants to punish that decision by somehow influencing it in the other direction, the same direction that the proponent was trying to get out of. I will not be supporting the amendment.
I presume the question was to me. It was looked at.
Councillor Marshall, one moment, please.
It certainly wasn't directed to the chair, and I said I had no quarrel.
Yeah. Councillor Marshall, one moment, please. We have Councillor Quirk that wants to speak.
Chair, I just question through you to our commissioner. It's my understanding that this official plan amendment file is not the same official plan amendment file, sorry, there you went, not the same official plan amendment that was Thundering Waters, because that initial one through Thundering Waters was a municipally instigated application, and this is a privately initiated application. Am I right in that?
Through you, Madam Chair, in fact, I don't think that the City of Niagara Falls actually initiated a secondary plan. There was a lot of background work, and they never, I don't think an application or a document came forward that was actually known as this, Thundering Waters secondary plan. Like, that was never under consideration by the city. What ended up happening through the process is at a certain point in time, the landowner submitted an application rebranding the development and significantly changing, like, it's quite a significant change from the initial concept. So it's a different thing altogether. Application came in as Riverfront Community.
So, and I just want to be very clear here, because I think this is actually, will be, the wording of that is basically saying that the official plan amendment AM 2017-2015 Riverfront Community was formally applied through as Thundering Waters. That's purely been what it's been called in the paper and what the process is. Has this proponent instigated an official plan amendment under the name Thundering Waters that you're aware of?
No.
So no, I mean, I think it's actually misleading to actually incorporate this in there, because it's actually patently false, right? So I can't support this amendment.
If I can, and just to provide some clarity, Madam Chair, the initial concepts, and this is quite normal through the development approval process, the initial concept was branded as Thundering Waters. And over the course of the process, it has been significantly changed to the extent that it almost no longer resembles anything that was previously put forward as on a conceptual basis. And on that basis, there was a delinking of the old Thundering Waters concept into Riverfront, because it's a completely new concept, much, much smaller, much more reflective and in compliance with natural heritage constraints. It's a different project.
Thank you, Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I don't know that it's a big deal. I think people know that it is Thundering Waters. Just for facts, if you look at the City of Niagara Falls website, which I have right here, it's called, the former one was called the Thundering Waters Secondary Plan Study. And it says, please note, go to the River Community Official Plan Amendment page for the most recently privately indicated proposal on these lands. If you go to that area, it says right in red at the top, the Riverfront Community Official Plan Amendment application applies to a portion of the lands formerly referred to as the Thundering Waters Secondary Plan Area. Perhaps we can just reflect the language, if the councillor wants, formally referring to a portion of the, referring to a portion of the lands formerly referred to as the Thundering Waters Secondary Plan Area. And then that's factual. And I'd be prepared to support it if it's that factual. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll call the question. No, it's not. Councillor Easton.
Madam Chairman, I was trying to put my name on the list, but I was unsuccessful. I can think of probably a half a dozen speculative reasons why all of this has gone on, but I do appreciate the Commissioner's explanations. And I would also say that as we progress through to the away from the OMB and the tremendous dependency that placed on us, maybe we should look at this as an example of the situation that really required major revamping in order to make it successful. So now you've got a situation where you have to, as a community, adhere to your local policy. You better be prepared to back it up, because there isn't going to be Big Daddy out there that's going to hear this whole thing. So you have to be able to act independently, and we've had lots of talk about independent action in the last few months, and I think that's pretty important. But what goes along with that is expanded accountability And so I think this is the new way, this is the future, and maybe there will be more times in the future when the region won't be involved, won't need to be involved, because the communities are becoming very sophisticated in their ability to deal with planning matters. So that would be my positive spin on it, even though we could all come up with lots of reasons why this rolled out the way it did. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. The motion is on the floor as it was, moved and seconded, and it's going to be a recorded vote, and I will call the question. On the amendment, formerly known as Thundering Waters. No. No. Formerly known as Thundering Waters.
My machine is not working now. I acknowledge that I would use that language. It didn't come across in the system.
Can we have an amendment to the amendment?
It's a friendly amendment to clarify that.
It's a friendly amendment to an amendment to clarify. Don't have to be consistent with anybody. We're making our own decision here. Now we have 4 more speakers to this motion that's on the floor, to the amendment.
Something wrong with the system, Madam Chair?
We want the original amendment, please. So are we contemplating an amendment to an amendment? All right. We have speakers to this. Councillor Nunziata. Yes.
The same reasons. If the intent is to clarify, then I have no problem with it. If the intent is to prejudice, then I do have a problem with it. But
I think we know what the intent is. Councillor Maves? Councillor Easton? All right. So if you're ready, Councillor Quirk?
Sorry, I'm just trying to follow this. We haven't voted on Councillor Marshall's amendment yet. This is a friendly amendment to Councillor Marshall's amendment. Is that how I see it?
Correct.
So you accepted, Councillor Marshall accepted the wording
Yes,
proposed by
and
Councillor
Councillor
Augustine.
Edgar seconded that.
Okay, so we're because it says we're request to speak list, but we're not on that. The amendment was still ongoing. We haven't voted on the amendment yet.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
I requested that to be a friendly amendment, that's all.
Yes, we can open the vote. It's recorded, please. Yes.
The vote is open.
Should we get mine? Mine isn't there. I thought I signed in. I vote no. So it passes. As long as the land hasn't moved, I guess we're okay.
Now to the full motion.
And voting on the motion as amendment, as amended, please. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Other business, please.
2 announcements. Just 2 really quick announcements.
No, but if you can
Yeah,
stay
you just might want to stay.
for a moment, please.
So we have a special council meeting of the
Yes.
whole for 4:30 on July 5th. We provided a memo to council on that, and that's simply to hold the public meeting to satisfy the legislative requirements to allow the region to develop a new official plan. We've advertised that, so it may be a short meeting or it may be a longer meeting, depending on who comes out. But at the end of the day, the requirement is that we hold that public meeting to determine the need for an update to the official plan. So that's the first announcement. I also have a new staff member that we'd like to introduce.
I am pleased to announce a new development planner here at Niagara Region. Her name is Alyssa Quintilla. Alyssa is coming to us from the private sector and has 5 years' experience in urban planning and holds a bachelor degree in environmental studies from the University of Waterloo. We are very pleased and excited to have Alyssa as part of our development planning team and would like to formally welcome her today.
Thank you. I would request that all, sorry? Sorry about that. I forgot. I would ask that all planning committee members please attend the special council meeting on the 5th. It's a mandatory public meeting. We'd like you all to be here, and we need others as well, but thank you.